Alright, good evening everybody out there in YouTube land. So, here I am, instead of using the traditional job search engines, I decided to try Craigslist. And, most of what they have on there is probably going to be, like quick side hustles, which is fine by me. I'll take anything. So, anyhow, I guess, what you learn when life throws a curveball at you, you just have to adapt and take anything you can get. And like I said, I'm kind of surprised that the retail places and the food service ain't calling me back because they want people. And because everything's online and they want to be jackasses, and you have to make, an account for each fucking company just to fucking apply, that just makes it way more frustrating. It's just like all the 50 job search engines that are out there. So that's pretty much where I'm at. Just adapting, kind of learning what I really want to do, career-wise and all that. Maybe I just wasn't cut out, for the corporate office world, and and that's that. I don't mind getting dirty and digging ditches. Like I messaged 3 people on the Craigslist posting. Many of them were labor jobs, construction, farm jobs. I'm just like, fuck it. It may be a short-time gig, but if it puts money in my pocket, who cares? And so so that's that. Just thinking outside the box. And we all need to do that a little bit more. And we live in this world where everybody's a victim of the yawn effect, and I've been guilty of this as myself. And I must confess, if I let's just hypothetically say I didn't get offered this contract position. I was still living in Massachusetts, still doing landscaping construction, still driving that B to Colorado, and just working my way up. Would I be a happier person? Well, that's up for debate. You still want to look for more, but if you're not getting more and where you're at is allowing you to grow, then just keep doing it. But what happens, when you uproot, you have to learn how to adapt, to the new area that you're in. And I know I've said this, in other videos, leaving the U.S., got to go to some other country, the same applies here in the States, I uprooted from Massachusetts to Virginia for a job opportunity, and it's obviously a different atmosphere down here than up there, in the whole tri-state area, it often seems like everything is at least a half hour away. That's just the way it is. Even though the distance really isn't that much farther, and let's assume I get, this, this one farming job, which is actually in the same county I used to live in. I'll just relocate again, and then just fucking kind of network and just move down south, for whatever's there. I don't give a fuck, And I've always liked working with my hands. If I could get a lab, ideally, if I get some type of lab position, or some type of environmental, ecological life, I'd be in like seventh heaven, Fucking getting out there, getting dirty, using my hands, and my brain, and just doing that shit. But unfortunately, that just wasn't in the cards completely. had, some partial success with it, but it just wasn't really in the cards. And, like I said, going to college isn't going to guarantee you a job, I go out on a limb and say even going to trade school might not do that. But, I'm not a fan of the Daily Wire guys or anything like that, but, Charlie Kirk, he's the one that has the point, go pick up a trade, go learn how to code, we always need plumbers, we always need mechanics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and, obviously, his spiel, much like the other two, they just love to fucking sit there and debate with college kids. And, to be fair, I thought it was bad in, 2010s when I, later went, but, now it almost seems like it's a fucking brainwash, and the whole debate of is college really preparing you for life? That's been going on since the fucking 90s. And, again, did we end up having too many graduates? And, obviously the two people I'll refer to again, I've watched their videos. I don't sit there and follow them, but I mean, I did subscribe to their channels, because they both put out some good content rather. I can talk. Tom Powell and Dapper Dab. And their channels are as different as night and day. I believe Dapper Dab is more or less a Republican conservative type. Tom Powell is obviously a Democrat. So they're polar opposites. They're doing something right. Tom Powell, he's doing way better than Dapper Dab YouTube-wise. But neither one went to college. And, according to both their testimonies, they dropped out of high school. They both dropped out of high school. Now, whether they went back and got their diploma or GED, that's a mystery. But, they dropped out for different reasons. But, they got into the trades. They worked hard. They got somewhere in life. And, of course, now they make content on YouTube. But, I don't think, Dapper Dab's following is nearly as big as, Mr. Powell's, because he still works in the trade. He's a roofer. Tom Powell does content creating full time. So he did something right. And, again, while I have been on a binge on, videos due to my current situation, I'm not here just to try to, get my channel to blow up or any of that. I've mentioned that before. I just post whatever rattles in my head. People are either going to watch it or they're not, And, obviously, my channel's all over the place. Would I be better if I focused on one topic and one topic only? Probably. Probably. Be it, the manosphere type, the whatever the fuck color pill is for whatever. Color, I don't know, red, green, black, yellow, whatever. Would I get more subscribers if I was, a diehard Trump supporter? Probably. Would I get more supporters if or subscribers if I voted for, Harrison was anti-Trump? I'm pretty anti-Trump's current policies, by the way. I didn't vote for Trump, but that's all I'm going to say. But I probably would. And, I'm not too worried if this channel doesn't, grow. I mean, I've gotten a few comments on some of my other videos. My favorite ones to upload are actually of my Geo tracker. I'm in a tough position right now, obviously, my situation. I'm trying to sell it. And when I got the vehicle, I set in my mind, the Santa Cruz, which is my daily, has to come first. I like to keep it that way. Fortunately, if life throws a curveball, I may have to do the opposite. It's not ideal, and it'd be a stupid ass decision, but at the end of the day, I would rather have a vehicle that runs and drives and moves than fucking let people beat me up over the price of what I'm selling it for, then yeah, people will beat you up over the price, especially on Craigslist, Auto Trader. You know, Auto Trader in itself will beat you up over the price as a fucking auction it. And cause that's just how they work. You know, at least with Craigslist, it's only like $5 a pop, and I can re-upload it, you know, without paying any, you know, whatever. Um, you know, so that's that. You know, if I have to take a loss, so be it. But you know, if nothing else, you know, all the stuff that I know it needs, you know, I have. I've been trying to do some work on it myself. You know, and obviously, you know, me learning as I go along, you know, run into obstacles, and what I've run into with that is buying tools I use like what once. So in essence, you know, it's almost like costing me as much just to bring it somewhere. You know what I mean? But you know, so that's pretty much that. You know, it's all about, you know, adaptation. You know, I don't want to fucking let my credit go to shit. You know, but you know, at the same time, I also don't want to be put in a position where I absolutely have no car and can't go to interviews. You know what I mean? So it is a pick your poison. Um, but you know, you just basically have to adapt. You just have to think outside the box, and you know, you just got to do what's right for you. You know, regardless of what anybody else says. You know, as long as you're not hurting anybody, or you know, you're doom and gloom all the time. You know, eventually life has a way of working out. I mean, you know, if you're gonna do the relocation route, and I've talked about this myself. You know, I've been considering it. You know, I'm not doing it to. I wouldn't be relocating to wherever just if I can, you know, run away from my problems or any of that crap. You know, contrary to what a lot of people do. And when they do that, they basically bring that mentality with them wherever they end up, and they basically condemn the rest of their existence. Anyhow, you know, that's all I have for you tonight. I'll talk to you.